the architect of ruin. I was their bedrock. For years, I poured every fiber of my being into Crimson and Veil, my wife's family empire. Endless nights hunched over spreadsheets, grueling supplier meetings, and every ounce of grit I could muster to make it flourish. This wasn't just a job, it was a silent vow I made to Clarissa on our wedding day, a desperate attempt to prove I belonged in her rarefied world. So when she and her sister Bianca summoned me to the office this morning, I assumed it was about the ambitious expansion plans I'd been meticulously crafting. I walked in, armed with stacks of projections, ready to dissect the numbers, but the air was wrong. Clarissa sat stiffly, her arms crossed, her face a mask, as if she barely knew me. Bianca, conversely, leaned back, a triumphant smirk playing on her lips. "Julian," Bianca began, her voice a razor's edge, "we're letting you go. We have no need for lazy people dragging us down." Lazy? The word struck me like a physical blow. Just last night I'd been working until 2 in the morning, salvaging a deal they'd nearly torpedoed. My gaze flew to Clarissa, silently pleading for her to utter a single word in my defense. She offered nothing. Her eyes remained fixed on the table, her fingers tapping a detached rhythm, as if this was merely a trivial inconvenience. A crushing weight pressed against my chest, but I bit back the retort. No shouts, no desperate pleas. Instead, I forced a polite smile, the same one I'd used 1,000 times to diffuse their petty squabbles, nodded once and said, "Very well, good luck." Then I turned and walked out, my footsteps echoing in the chilling silence they left in my wake. The rest of the day blurred into a disorienting haze. I drove home in a stupor, the steering wheel slick with a sweat I hadn't even noticed. Our house, no, her house, with its cold marble floors and soaring ceilings, felt even more cavernous as I stepped inside. I tossed my keys onto the counter and sank onto the sofa, staring blankly at the ceiling. How could she? After 8 years of marriage, after everything I'd poured into her family's legacy, she'd allowed Bianca to dismiss me like some expendable grunt. My phone buzzed in my pocket, yanking me from the spiraling depths. It was a message from Marco, the accountant who'd been with me through every late-night budget crunch. "Heard what happened. Don't think they read your contract." I frowned, rereading the words. My contract. It hadn't crossed my mind since I'd signed it years ago. Back then, Clarissa's father, Raphael, had still been at the helm. What was Marco implying? I quickly typed, "What's in it?" But his response was not immediate. I leaned back, gears grinding in my mind. If there was something they'd overlooked, perhaps this wasn't the end. I rose and poured myself a glass of water, trying to douse the burning resentment from Bianca's venomous word, lazy. I had rebuilt their entire supply chain from the ground up when it had collapsed 3 years prior. I had secured the Peterson account, the one that had kept us afloat during that brutal period. And Clarissa, she knew it all. She'd seen me stumble home, exhausted, had kissed me goodnight as I drifted off at the kitchen table, laptop still humming. And yet today she hadn't even looked at me. I swallowed, the cold water doing nothing to quench the rising inferno in my chest. Was this her idea too? Did she want me gone? Or was she simply too weak to stand against Bianca? I didn't know which thought stung more. My phone vibrated again. Marco. "Check the merger clause from the subsidiary deal. You're still tied to it." The subsidiary deal? 5 years ago, when we'd acquired that small tech firm to bolster Crimson and Veil's patents, I'd been neck-deep in it, negotiating the terms while Raphael clapped me on the back, calling me his right-hand man. The merger clause? What could that possibly mean now? I set the glass down and rubbed my temples. The first glimmer of hope, or perhaps something far darker, stirred within me. The next hour was a blur of frantic searching through old files in my home office, the ones I'd kept since I still trusted Clarissa. The contract was buried in a folder labeled CNV Merger 2020, yellowed at the edges but still legible. I tore through the pages, my eyes scanning legal jargon I barely comprehended until I reached page 17. There it was, in black and white, my name, listed as co-chairman of the subsidiary with full authority over its assets. Assets that included Crimson and Vale's intellectual property, trademarks, patents, the very backbone of the company. My heart hammered against my ribs. They couldn't fire me from there. That wasn't their decision to make. I leaned back, staring at the paper, a slow smile creeping onto my lips. Not the polite one this time, but something real. They had made a mistake, a monumental one, and they didn't even know it yet. I picked up my phone and sent a message to Marco. Found it. Now what? His reply was swift. Hold tight. Let them unravel. I sank deeper into the sofa. The weight of the day began to shift. They thought they had cut me loose, but they had merely handed me the rope. All I had to do now was wait. The morning after my termination, the shrill ring of my phone sliced through the oppressive silence of the house like a knife. I rolled over. Clarissa's side of the bed was cold. She hadn't come home last night, likely reveling in their petty victory at Bianca's. The screen blazed with the name of Raphael Vale, her father, the man who'd built Crimson and Vale from nothing and had trusted me when I married into their family. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the answer button. What did he want? An apology? To gloat? I answered anyway, my voice hoarse with sleep. Hello? His voice boomed through the line, loud and furious, like an impending storm. Julian, what in God's name did they do? Did they not read the damn contract? I froze, the words sinking in slowly, heavily. Raphael didn't know. He hadn't been in that office, hadn't witnessed Clarissa's blank stare or Bianca's sneer. I let the question hang, unsure how to respond or if I even should. I don't know, Raphael. I finally managed, struggling to keep my tone even. You'll have to ask them. He cursed under his breath. Something about those girls and how they were ruining everything, but I barely registered it. My mind was already racing back to the merger clause Marco had hinted at, the one buried deep in my contract. Raphael's fury meant something big was brewing, and I had a chilling premonition that I held the key. I dragged myself out of bed and shuffled into the kitchen, the phone still warm in my hand from the call. The house felt too large, too quiet, without Clarissa's usual chatter or the clinking of her coffee cup. I brewed myself a strong cup, the aroma filling the air as I replayed Raphael's words. Did they not read the damn contract? He sounded panicked, not just angry, as if he knew something they didn't. I poured my coffee and sat at the table, staring out at the gray sky. Yesterday I'd been blindsided, discarded like trash. But now I was starting to see the cracks in their meticulously laid plan. That subsidiary deal from 5 years ago wasn't just some obscure footnote. It was a lifeline, and I was still very much tethered to it. Co-chairman of an intellectual property holding company, with control over everything that made Crimson and Vale worth anything at all. I took a sip, the bitterness matching the taste in my mouth from their treatment. If Raphael was this agitated, it meant Clarissa and Bianca had no idea what they'd walked into, and I wasn't about to tell them. My phone vibrated again. Marco this time. Raphael just called me too. He's losing his mind. Said the girl's really screwed up. I smirked, typing back, "He called me first. What's he saying?" Marco's reply came swiftly, asking all about the merger terms. I think he's worried about the patents. Patents, of course. Crimson and Vale wasn't just a name. It was a brand built on technological advancements and trademarks. All of it locked away in that subsidiary I'd helped acquire. Without my signature, they couldn't license anything, couldn't move forward with new deals. I put down my phone and leaned back, the coffee warming my hands. Yesterday, I'd felt like a fool walking out of that office, tail between my legs. But today, I was starting to feel like the one in control. Raphael's call wasn't just an angry tirade. It was a warning that Clarissa and Bianca hadn't yet heard. I wondered how long it would take them to realize. How long before they came crawling back? The rest of the morning I spent pacing the house, my mind churning with questions. What if they tried to fight it? What if they brought in their high-powered lawyers? I knew little of legal intricacies, but enough to trust Marco and Raphael. If he was this upset, it meant the contract was ironclad. I paused at the window again, watching a delivery truck rumble down the street. My entire life had been about maintaining stability, fixing problems at work, smoothing things over with Clarissa when she got anxious, even biting my tongue when Bianca snapped at me. But stability no longer mattered. They had pushed me out, and now they were about to learn the true cost of their arrogance. My phone rang again. Raphael, round two. I picked it up. Ready this time. Julian, he said, softer now, as if he was drained. I'm so sorry. I didn't know they'd be so foolish. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. It's done, I said. But what's in that contract, Raphael, that has you so rattled? He paused, then let out a dry chuckle. You're still co-chairman of the subsidiary. They can't run the company without you. I said nothing, just let it sink in. He was right, and they didn't even know it yet. I was still reeling from Raphael's call when the full weight of it all began to settle, heavy and palpable, like a profound ache in my bones. Clarissa and Bianca had dismissed me without a second thought, but now they were about to discover what that truly meant. It was late afternoon when Marco messaged me again. They're in a meeting with the lawyers. Word is they'd just read the contract. I could almost picture it. Clarissa rigid at the head of the table, Bianca pacing like a caged beast, both of them staring at those pages as if they'd spontaneously combusted. I didn't need to be there to know what they'd found. 5 years ago, when we'd acquired that tech subsidiary to bolster Crimson and Vale's portfolio, I'd been designated its co-chairman. It hadn't seemed like much then, just a title Raphael had added to ensure smooth sailing during the merger. But now it was everything. That subsidiary held all the intellectual property rights, the patents, the trademarks, the innovations that kept the company afloat. Without my signature, they were paralyzed. I sat on the sofa, the contract resting on the coffee table before me, and let the realization take root. They had tried to cut me out, but instead they had trapped themselves. I leaned forward, tracing a finger over the words on page 17. Julian Rivera appointed co-chairman with full authority over subsidiary assets. It was right there, plain as day, signed and sealed. I vaguely remembered the day. Raphael laughing over beers after the deal closed, saying I'd earned it. I hadn't thought much of it then. I was just happy to be part of the team. But Clarissa and Bianca, they had never bothered to dig this deep. They'd taken over the company from Raphael last month, proud and self-assured, and decided they could simply discard me like yesterday's news. I wondered what their faces looked like now. Pale, probably, with that strained expression Clarissa got when she was anxious, and Bianca's lips pressed into a thin, angry line. They'd brought in some fancy New York lawyer, Noelle, to help with the transition. I'd met her once, cold as ice, with a handshake that felt like a challenge. She was probably the one delivering the news, her voice even as she told them they'd irrevocably screwed up. I stood and walked into the kitchen, needing to move, to think. The house was still too quiet. Clarissa's absence hung like a shroud. I pulled a beer from the fridge, popped it open, and took a long swig. What were they doing now? Arguing with each other? Blaming Noelle? I could almost hear Bianca's sharp, loud voice. How did we miss this? And Clarissa, quieter, trying to maintain composure, though her hands were probably trembling. They thought they were so clever, dismissing me in front of everyone, making a public spectacle of my humiliation. But they hadn't known the half of it. Without my approval, they couldn't renew licensing agreements, couldn't launch new products, couldn't even access the bank accounts tied to the subsidiary's assets. Everything was frozen, and I was the only one with the key. I took another swig, the cold bottle sweating in my hand, and felt a strange mix of anger and grim satisfaction. They had humiliated me, but now they were the ones trapped. I returned to the sofa and picked up my phone, scrolling through old messages from Clarissa. Just last week, she'd been texting me about dinner plans, also casual and sweet. Be home by 7. Let's order pizza. Now she couldn't even look me in the eye. I tossed the phone aside and stared at the contract again. My mind raced. What would they do next? Try to coax me into signing? Threaten me? I didn't know Noelle well, but she struck me as someone who would twist words, looking for a loophole. Good luck with that. Raphael had made sure this thing was airtight. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and allowed myself to savor their burgeoning panic. The board of directors would know soon, and so would the clients. People would start asking questions, and Clarissa and Bianca would have no answers. I wasn't sure yet what I would do. Part of me wanted to watch it all burn. Part of me just wanted them to admit they were wrong. But one thing was clear. They had underestimated me, and that was their greatest mistake. The beer was half gone when my phone vibrated again. Marco with an update. Noelle's losing her mind, says they need your signature or the whole company is dead. I smirked, setting the bottle down. Dead. Sounded about right. They had built their castle on sand, and I was the tide rolling in. I didn't reply to Marco yet. I needed to let it all sink in to plan my next move. But for now, I just sat there, the contract on my lap, and let the silence of the house envelop me. They would know soon what this meant, and when they did, I would be ready. I chose silence. After that, it was a profound, suffocating quiet, no matter how desperately they tried to reel me back in. The day after Marco's message about Noelle's unraveling, my inbox began to ignite. First, an email from Bianca, short and sharp as if she were doing me a favor. Julian, we need to discuss the terms of your departure. Call me. Terms of my departure? I almost laughed aloud. She still believed she was in control, as if I were some loose end she could tie up with a quick conversation. I didn't reply. Then Clarissa wrote, her words tentative as if rehearsed. Can we talk? This has gotten out of hand. Out of hand? I nearly scoffed, but held it in. I simply stared at the message for a full minute, my finger hovering over the screen, but I typed nothing in return. I tossed the phone onto the sofa and walked away. They didn't deserve my words. Not yet. If they wanted to squirm, I would let them. I held the upper hand now, and I wasn't about to relinquish it just because they were starting to sweat. I needed to clear my head. So I drove into the city, familiar streets blurring past as I replayed everything. The contract, Raphael's call, Marco's messages. It was all building, but I wasn't ready to act. Not until I knew precisely what was happening on their end. I pulled into a small coffee shop, the kind Geraldine, Raphael's former assistant, and I used to frequent for lunch between meetings. She'd always liked me, said I was the only one who treated her like a person, not just a secretary. On a whim, I called her. Julian, she answered, her voice warm and surprised. I heard what those girls did. Are you all right? I smiled despite myself. I'm fine, Geraldine, just figuring things out. What's the word from the trenches? She chuckled, a quiet knowing sound. Chaos, darling. Absolute chaos. She recounted how clients were calling incessantly, bewildered by contract delays. Suppliers were withholding shipments, awaiting approvals that weren't coming. Investors were spooked, whispering about withdrawing funds. They're running around like headless chickens, she said. And that Noelle, she's snapping at everyone, but she has no answers. I ordered a coffee as we spoke, the barista nodding as he set it on the counter. I took a sip, letting Geraldine's words paint the picture. Chaos. Good. They had brought this upon themselves, thinking they could discard me and operate seamlessly. I thanked her and hung up, settling into a corner booth with my drink. The shop was quiet, only a few people tapping away on laptops, the coffee machine humming in the background. I leaned back, gazing out the window at the gray day. Clarissa's message still gnawed at me. This has gotten out of hand, as if it were an accident, as if she hadn't chosen to sit there and allow it to happen. I had loved her once, truly. Those early years, staying up late, dreaming of the future, her head on my shoulder. But now she was a stranger, and I wasn't sure I wanted her back in my life, not even if she begged. I took another sip. The coffee tasted bitter. They could send all the emails and messages they wanted. I wasn't budging. My phone vibrated again. Another email, this time from Bianca. Longer and with that strained civility she used when she was furious. Julian, we are attempting to resolve this amicably. Ignoring us is not helping. Let's meet and sort this out. Amicably? Yes, right, as if firing me in front of the entire board was amicable. I deleted it without a second thought. Geraldine's voice echoed in my head. Clients are panicking, suppliers are freezing, investors are pulling out. This was their mess now, not mine. I owed them no rescue. The contract gave me power, yes, but it was my silence that was truly crushing them. Every hour I didn't respond. Every day I remained quiet. Their world was crumbling, piece by agonizing piece. I finished my coffee and left the cup on the table, the warmth still lingering in my hands as I walked out. The air was crisp, a slight breeze tugging at my jacket. I felt steady for the first time since that meeting, as if I stood on solid ground while they flailed. Driving home, I thought about what Geraldine had said, how Noelle had no answers, how employees were whispering about leaving. This wasn't just about patents or trademarks anymore. It was about trust. They had lost it with clients, with suppliers, with everyone who kept Crimson and Vale afloat. And I didn't need to say a word to make that clear. I pulled into the driveway, the house looming dark and empty, and sat in the car for a minute with the engine off. My phone was silent now. No more messages, no more pleas. Perhaps they had finally understood. I wasn't their fix-it guy anymore. I was nothing there. I got out, locked the car, and walked inside. The silence of the house matched the silence I had chosen. Let them figure it out. Let them fall. I maintained my silence for several days, letting Clarissa and Bianca wallow in the turmoil they had wrought before I finally chose to break it. But not to them. Not yet. The board of directors had been relentlessly emailing me, polite at first, then insistent, demanding clarification on the operational delays that were shaking Crimson and Vale to its core. I could have ignored them too, allowed the entire edifice to collapse under its own weight. But something within me yearned for them to know precisely what was happening and why. So I sat at my desk, laid out the contract like a roadmap, and typed out my response. Not an angry screed, not a plea, just the facts, cold and clear, from me, Julian Rivera, co-chairman of the subsidiary they had conveniently forgotten. I laid it all bare, the 5-year-old merger clause. My legitimate authority over the intellectual property and how without my signature nothing could move. No trademarks, no patents, not a single deal. I didn't ask for my job back, nor did I beg for forgiveness. I ended with a single sentence. I demand accountability, not reinstatement. Then I pressed send, CC'd every single board member, and leaned back, my coffee mug warm in my hands. Let's see how they handled that. The day after passed in a hushed calm. No calls, no messages, just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car rumbling down the street. I figured they needed time for it to sink in, time for the emails to reach, for the panic to set in. I was not wrong. By evening, my phone began to light up, not from Clarissa or Bianca, but from clients. The first was a guy named Paul who ran a tech firm we licensed innovations to. "Julian, what the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice strained. "We can't get approvals, and our production is stalled." I kept my tone calm, professional. "I'm working on it, Paul. Hang tight. New terms will be forthcoming." He grumbled but hung up. And then another call followed. Then another. Suppliers asking about shipments, partners worrying about deadlines. I gave them all the same line. "I'm handling it. It'll be clear soon." They didn't need to know I hadn't decided what soon meant yet. I just wanted them mollified. And Clarissa and Bianca, I wanted them scrambling. I was on my 4th call when Marco messaged, "Sales plummeting, employees quitting." I scoffed, ending the call with the client before typing back, "Good, very good." That's an understatement. This is what I'd been waiting for them to truly feel the crushing weight of their foolishness. I pictured Bianca tearing through the office, screaming at anyone who'd listen, and Clarissa desperately trying to maintain composure as the numbers plummeted. They thought they could run the show without me, but now desks were emptying, deals were stalled, and the desperate calls were coming to me. One message, however, snagged my attention, not from a client, but from Harper, a department head I'd always liked. She'd messaged out of the blue, "Heard what's happening. If you start something new, I'm in." I stared at it for a minute, my thumb hovering. Start something new? I hadn't dared to think that far, but the idea lodged itself in my mind. I replied, Appreciate it. We'll keep you in the loop. Then I put down my phone, my mind buzzing. By evening, the fallout was undeniable. Marco called, his voice humming with energy. Julian, it's bad. 2 salespeople walked out today and a major client just pulled their account. Now they're blaming Noelle. She's out too. I leaned against the kitchen counter. The room was dim, the sun dipping below the horizon. Noelle quit? I asked, surprised. Yeah, he said. Bianca threw her under the bus, said the firing was her idea. She's packing up tonight. I shook my head, almost feeling sorry for her. Almost. She was part of it, pushing that legal line to Clarissa and Bianca, but now she was just another casualty. I thanked Marco and hung up, pulling a beer from the fridge. The cold glass felt good in my hand as I walked into the living room and sank onto the sofa. The company was crumbling piece by piece, and I'd barely lifted a finger. That notice had done its job. Short, sharp, and straight to the point. I took a swig, the bitterness matching my mood. Clarissa's face from lunch flashed in my mind. Pale, pleading, trying to charm her way out of this. She hadn't called since, neither had Bianca. Perhaps they were too busy fighting each other now. Or perhaps they had finally understood. I wasn't playing their games anymore. Harper's message, though, lingered. Start something new. Could I take the intellectual property, the clients reaching out to me, the people like her who would follow and build something better? I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The company was falling apart, sure, but I didn't want it to just die. I wanted it to hurt them first, and then to rise from the ashes on my terms. I finished the beer and set the bottle down, the silence encompassing me. They'd feel it tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, and when they were done falling. The executive chairman. I was ready for the fight. I was finishing breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, nothing fancy, when the phone rang again. Raphael's name flashed, and I knew this wasn't just another angry tirade. I wiped my hands on a napkin and answered, striving for calm. Hello, Raphael. He wasted no time. Julian, we have an emergency board meeting tomorrow. I need you there. Not as an employee, but as the executive chairman of the intellectual property holding company. Can you do it? I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. Executive chairman. Not a return to my old job, not humiliating scraps, but a position above Clarissa and Bianca with real power. I set my fork down, my mind racing. What's the deal? I asked. He sighed, a heavy, tired sound. The company's bleeding out. Clients have left. Employees are quitting. And the board is done with the girls' mess. We're voting on new terms. Bianca's out of client-facing work. Clarissa's being demoted to COO. Are you in? I leaned back, the chair creaking beneath me. This was massive, bigger than I'd anticipated. Yes, I said finally. I'm in, but on my terms. He chuckled, a short, hoarse sound. Good. See you tomorrow. He hung up, and I sat there, eggs growing cold, feeling the shift happening right beneath me. I spent the rest of the day busy, cleaning the kitchen, mowing the lawn, anything to keep my hands occupied while my mind processed. Raphael was handing me the reins, or at least a big piece of them. Bianca being out of client work meant she'd be sidelined, likely stuck in some back office if she even stayed at all. Clarissa, co-o, she would hate reporting to me, but she'd have no choice. I smirked, pushing the lawnmower across the yard, clippings clinging to my boots. They fired me like I was nothing, and now I'd be the one signing off on their every move. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it was close. I finished up and went inside, got a glass of water, and checked my phone. Marco had texted, "Board is buzzing. Raphael's pushing hard for you." I typed back, "He called. I'm in tomorrow." His reply came swiftly. Damn, they got burned. I put down my phone and took a long drink, the cold water calming me. Burned, maybe. But I wasn't just here to watch them fall. I was here to build something from it. The rebirth of Crimson and Veil. The meeting was early, 9 a.m. sharp, and I arrived on time, dressed in a suit, tie, the whole 9 yards. The boardroom felt different now. not the place I'd been cast out from. I walked in, head held high, and saw faces turn, some surprised, some relieved. Raphael sat at the head of the table, his jaw set, and he gave me a nod. Clarissa was there, pale and quiet, her hands clasped before her. Bianca sat beside her, arms crossed, glaring as if she could burn a hole through me. I took the seat Raphael indicated, right next to him, and waited. He started quickly. "We're here because Crimson and Vale is dying," he said, his voice cutting through the room's silence. "Julian's notice has frozen everything, and we can't move without him. I propose he rejoin us, executive chairman of IP. Bianca's out of client work. Clarissa is COO. We vote now." The room hushed, then hands went up. Raphael's faction first, then a few more. It was quick, clean. Bianca shoved her chair back and stormed out of the room, the door slamming behind her. Clarissa didn't move, just stared at the table. I said little during the meeting, just listened as Raphael detailed the losses, botched deals, empty desks, angry investors. When it was my turn, I was brief. "I'll unfreeze the IP when we have new working terms. I'm not here to sink the company, I'm here to fix it." Nods went around the table, even from those who'd been hesitant. Clarissa finally looked up, her gaze meeting mine for a second before dropping again. She knew it was over. Her big takeover, her sister's grand plan, all of it. The meeting concluded and people began to disperse. Raphael clapped me on the shoulder as he left. "Good to have you back," he said. I nodded, but I wasn't back. Not the way I was before. This was new, and it was mine. Clarissa lingered, slowly gathering her things, as if she wanted to say something. I didn't wait. I walked out of the boardroom and headed for my car. The air outside was cool, the sun just rising, and I felt steady, grounded. Back home, I sat at my desk, the contract still lying there like a trophy. The vote was done, but the work was just beginning. I needed to unfreeze the IP, get clients back, stop the bleeding. But first, I needed terms, rules that would keep Clarissa and Bianca in check, that would ensure no one could pull a stunt like that again. I grabbed a notebook and began to jot down ideas, my pen scratching across the page. Bianca sidelined, and Clarissa would have to swallow the bitter pill of reporting to me. I smirked, picturing her face in meetings, trying to maintain that cold mask. This wasn't the end. It was a beginning, and I was ready, forging a new legacy. I woke up the next morning with a clear head, the board's decision still fresh and real. The sun was just beginning to filter through the blinds as I brewed coffee, the machine hissing as if urging me on. Executive chairman. The words kept circling in my mind, heavy yet sweet. Clarissa and Bianca had tried to cast me aside, but now I was back, higher than ever, and they couldn't touch me. I carried my mug to the desk, the contract still there, and began to plan. The company was a mess, clients gone, staff depleted, sales flatlining. But I wasn't there to just patch it up. I wanted it stronger, better, and free of the self-serving nonsense they'd introduced. I pulled out my laptop and started typing, laying out a new structure, hiring based on merit, clear lines of authority, no more family favors. Clarissa could remain COO, but now she would report to me, and Bianca. Her apologetic email had come in overnight. "Julian, I'm so sorry, let's talk." But I didn't reply. She was out of the game, and I had work to do. First order of business, I called Marco. He answered quickly, his voice bright. "Boss, heard the news, congratulations." I smiled, sipping my coffee. "Thanks, I'm making you CFO, are you in?" He laughed, loud and easy. "Hell yeah. When do I start?" I told him today. "Right now. Get over here, sort out the books, figure out what we can salvage." He was loyal, smart, and didn't play games. I needed him. Next, I texted Harper, the department head who'd offered to walk with me. VP of Brand Strategy. Still mean it? Her reply was instant. "Absolutely. I'm there." I nodded to myself, adding her to the list. New talent, people I could trust. That's how we'd turn this around. I spent the morning sketching out the plan, cut the dead weight, bring in new faces, rebuild from the ground up. The old Crimson and Vale was gone. This was mine now, and I'd make it work. By midday, I was back in the office, not at my old desk, but in a new, cleared-out space for me. Big windows and a view. Oh, Clarissa was already there, sitting in a meeting room with some staff, her face strained but professional. I didn't go in, just watched through the glass for a second. She looked up, saw me, and quickly turned away as if she couldn't bear it. Good. Let her feel it. I settled into my chair and began sending emails. First to clients, short and direct. IP will be unlocked soon. New terms coming. Bear with us. Some replied quickly, relieved, saying they'd wait. Then suppliers, same deal, we were sorting everything out. Shipments would resume next week. The replies accumulated, cautious but hopeful, and I felt the tide turning. This wasn't just about holding power. This was about using it right. The new order noon arrived and I called the first meeting. Just me, Marco, Harper, and a few others I'd selected from the old guard. Clarissa was due to be there too, part of her COO duties, and she walked in last, her heels clicking sharply on the floor. She took the seat opposite me, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the table. I wasted no time. "We're rebuilding," I said, handing out my notes. "Hiring on merit, no favorites. Marco is CFO, Harper is VP of brand. Clarissa, you'll be handling operations. Daily reports to me." She nodded once, quick and stiff, no argument. Marco grinned, flipping through the pages, and Harper leaned forward, already buzzing with ideas. We worked for hours, budgets, timelines, new branding plans, building something real while Clarissa sat quietly taking notes. She tried to maintain her dignity, her voice even when she spoke, but I could see it wearing her down. Every decision now flowed through me and she couldn't escape it. Afterward, Marco lingered, clapping me on the shoulder. "This is serious, Julian. We have a chance." I nodded, gathering my papers. "Yeah, just keep an eye on the numbers." He left and I stayed, watching the office empty. Clarissa lingered too, slowly gathering her things as if she was going to say something. Finally, she approached, her voice quiet. "Is this how it's going to be? You'll make every decision?" I looked at her, calm and firm. "You wanted me gone. This is what you get instead." She swallowed, her jaw tightening. Then she turned and left. I let her go, the door clicking shut behind her. She'd toe the line, she'd have to, or she'd lose what little she had left. I finished late, the sky dark outside the window, and drove home, the radio off, only my thoughts for company. The company was shifting. New blood, new rules, and me at the helm. I'd called Geraldine earlier, offered her a generous severance package to retire happy, and she'd cried, saying I was the best of them. Maybe I was. I pulled into the driveway, the house still quiet, but it didn't feel as empty anymore. This wasn't about revenge now. It was about building something lasting, something they couldn't break. I'd keep Clarissa on a short leash, ignore Bianca's whining, and build it my way. Tomorrow I'd start again, and it would be better than they ever dreamed. The unbreakable legacy. I woke early the next morning, the house still dark, and felt a quiet, powerful sense of strength settling within me. Something steady, like the earth after a storm. Months had passed since that boardroom meeting, since I'd taken the reins as executive chairman, and Crimson and Veil was finally breathing again. I brewed coffee, the familiar gurgle filling the kitchen, and thought about how far we'd come. Clients were back, loyal and steady, their trust rebuilt with every deal I signed. Investors were back too, pouring money in. And once they saw the numbers climb, Clarissa stayed detached, doing her COO job, but never pushing me, never daring to step out of line. Bianca was long gone, her apologetic email still unanswered in my inbox. I didn't need her whining. I was past it. Today wasn't about them. It was about solidifying the legacy, making sure no one else would ever be cast aside as I had been. I sat down at my desk, the contract still there like an old friend, and began to write the final piece. New bylaws, a clause to protect the company and me forever. The office hummed, the air thick with people who actually wanted to be there. Marco had brought the books in line, his smile wide as he waved. "Numbers are up again," he said, sliding a report across my desk. "Best quarter in years." I nodded, flipping through it. Sales strong, costs down, everything humming. "Good work," I told him, and it was genuine. He'd put in the work, and so had Harper. Her new branding strategy was rolling out smoothly and clearly, drawing in clients we'd never touched before. I'd built a team, not a family dynasty, and it showed. Clarissa was in her office, the door closed, likely poring over the operational reports I'd requested. She sent them daily now, on time, no excuses, professional but cold. I didn't care. She'd lost her chance to be anything else to me. I turned back to my screen and kept typing. The bylaws took shape, rules for fair hiring, clear authority, a legacy clause that tied intellectual property to merit, not blood. No one could pull what they'd done again. Mid-morning, I called a quick meeting. Just me, Marco, Harper, and a couple of board members Raphael had sent. Clarissa was due to be there too, her chair scraping as she sat opposite me. I laid out the bylaws, keeping it simple. "This protects us," I said, handing out copies. "No more power grabs, no more firing people without consequence. The intellectual property stays with the company, but only under leadership that deserves it." Marco nodded, scanning the pages. "Smart, locks everything down." Harper chimed in. "Clients will appreciate the stability." The board members agreed. One made notes, the others simply said, "Raphael approves." Clarissa remained composed, her pen tapping on the table once, twice, then stopping. I didn't look at her long, just enough to see her jaw tighten, then relax. She knew this pinned her down, gave her no way to climb back to where she was. Good. The vote was swift, unanimous, and I signed it right there. The pen felt heavy in my hand. It was done. Afterward, I walked the floor, something I'd started doing to stay connected. Talked to employees, listened to them. They were smiling now. Not the fake kind like before, but genuine, as if they trusted me. One guy, a new hire, stopped me. "Thanks for this, Julian. It's different here." I clapped him on the shoulder, said, "That's the point," and walked on. The place hummed, phones ringing, keyboards clacking, deals being made. I'd unfrozen the intellectual property a few weeks after the board vote, renegotiated terms with clients myself, and watched everything fall into place. Suppliers were shipping on time. Investors called me directly, and the company was thriving, not because of Clarissa's name or Bianca's bluster, but because I'd made it work. I paused by the window, looking out at the street below, the sun high and bright. This was mine now, built on my terms, and it felt right. Evening came, and I stayed late, finishing up emails, thank yous to clients, updates for the board. Clarissa had left without a word, her office dark when I passed. I didn't mind the quiet. It gave me space to think. The bylaws were filed, the legacy clause locked in. No one could be cast aside as I had been, not without a fight. I leaned back in my chair, the desk lamp casting a soft glow, and allowed myself a smile. Not the polite one I'd worn the day they fired me, but a real one, small and sure. Revenge wasn't the goal, not in the end. I wanted them to feel it, sure. And they did. Bianca sidelined, Clarissa humbled. But this was better. I took their mess and turned it into something strong, something that would last. I shut down my computer, grabbed my coat, and walked out. The office behind me was silent. I drove home, city lights blurring, and felt lighter than I had in months. The house was still empty, but it didn't weigh on me now. I'd rewritten the rules, set the terms, and kept that polite smile ready, just in case I needed it. Tomorrow I'd keep building, and they'd never forget who held it all together.